Okay, let's go back a little bit because it's only fair to ask you this. When we asked you a few times to comment on these alleged parties in Downing Street, you didn't want to do that, and we sort of made people aware that you didn't want to do that. So, do you want to explain to people listening why that was?
Well, obviously, the Metropolitan Police were investigating reports of events in Downing Street and the Cabinet Office. They've now conducted their first phase of the investigations and issued a number of fixed penalty notices, including one to the Prime Minister for an event that took place, I think, in the Cabinet room when a birthday cake was produced.
Indeed. And how do you feel about that now? Because when on the occasions when you did speak about this, and there were one or two, you said, let's not preempt an investigation outcome. And if there is found to be a case to answer, then I can't condone that behaviour. Do you stand by that?
Well, obviously, I said there would be consequences, and there have been consequences. The Prime Minister was issued with a fixed penalty notice, which he's paid.
Indeed, but when we're talking about a fixed penalty notices, I'd imagine that we're not talking about very much money, which isn't going to be a struggle to pay. Do you not think that as a sitting Prime Minister, that there's more to it than that?
Well, the Prime Minister is going to make a statement today, as I understand it, and what I think may well be the case is that at the time he wasn't aware that the event was in contravention of the rules. We'll have to wait and see. I know certainly in Scarborough a number of fixed penalty notices were handed out by the police, and the police looked at some of them and decided they wouldn't necessarily have a fine levied against them. So there were a lot of confusion amongst people generally. I know one couple were sitting in their car looking across, having a flask of tea and a sandwich about 500 yards from their house, and they were pulled up by the police, but they weren't issued with a notice, but the police did consider that might be in contravention. So we'll have to wait and see what the Prime Minister says.
Yeah, I'm going to put it to you, though. I think the rules were very clear at the time on social gatherings. They weren't allowed, outside of your bubble, if you like, or your household. And you told me at the time how strictly you observe those rules, and how strictly most people observe those rules, including myself. That I don't think there's any doubt about what those rules were. There's no fuzzy areas around the edges, are there?
No, you're right, and the rules were broken as far as the police are concerned. I think maybe in hindsight, Number 10 should have had a policy of working from home. I mean, obviously, a lot of people were in Number 10, the Cabinet Office. At some point, refreshments were served. Maybe the discussion wasn't strictly limited to business. I mean, I feel quite sort of sorry for the Chancellor, because he arrived early for the next meeting, which was the same people in the same room, and because cake was being consumed, he was included in those given a fixed penalty notice. But I know it has been very difficult for people in the workplace where they've been in for work, been with the same people all day, trying to maintain social distancing. But I think in hindsight, maybe the whole Number 10 operation should have been a working from home operation. The Prime Minister could have been in Chequers. Other people could have been in their homes. Whether that would have limited their effectiveness, I don't know. But it seems pretty obvious to me that people were in close proximity, both at the party, if that's what it's to be called, the situation where the cake was produced, but also people working together quite closely and possibly spreading infection. So maybe it's something that they should have looked at in terms of the safety of working together in close proximity.
But yes, obviously, by the way that you're talking, you still have full confidence in him to continue in, leading the country.
Well, I really don't think that people who voted in large numbers to elect the government 2 years ago, who see the problems facing us in terms of what's going on in Ukraine, the cost of living crisis, the situation with energy supplies in our country, the migrant crisis with 28,500 people last year arriving on our shores. That there's an awful lot that we need to be getting on with sorting out some of these issues. And were we to have a leadership election, that would probably mean 3 months during which we couldn't really make much in the way of decisions. And of course, at the end of that process, I think many people might think, well, a small number of people who happen to be members of the Conservative Party have elected the new Prime Minister. And that could well, I think, be just as big a democratic crisis as maybe the current situation we face at the moment. So I think that, a fine has been levied. The fine has been paid by the Prime Minister in the same way that people get fined for speeding, people get fined for lots of other types of offence, including lawmakers who find themselves breaking the law. So, at the moment, I really don't think it would be in the best interest of the country to have a leadership election and all the uncertainty that brings about.
I'm going to put this to you. I'm going to put this to you. In the New Year's Honours list, obviously you were knighted for your services to politics and generally that kind of thing. Now, what comes with that, in my view, is extra responsibility in terms of, making politics credible, clean, and all that kind of stuff, and something that has honour in it, because I feel that that's what a sir, there's a lot of honour associated with that, but this doesn't feel very honourable at all. And a lot of people are saying
the responsibility that all members of Parliament have to their constituents is to ensure that we make the best decisions for the country. And yes, the Prime Minister has been judged by the police to have broken the rules. I suspect maybe he said that he didn't think he'd broken the rules. So, it may be the fact that there was cake at the table. He didn't see as making too much difference. I don't know. He's going to make a statement this afternoon anyway. But, we face a lot of major issues, not least in Ukraine. And I think we cannot allow ourselves the self-indulgence of a leadership election within the Conservative Party. And of course, I think many people who voted for the Conservatives 2 years ago might feel a little aggrieved if they voted because it was for Boris, that to end up with a leader over whom they'll have no say. And I rather suspect that if we did have a leadership election and a new leader was installed in number 10, there'd be then calls from the opposition to have a general election to give that person their own mandate. And there again, so it would be pretty much halfway to Christmas before we resolve that situation. And in the meantime, we would be paralysed in terms of making important political decisions. Yes, there would be a caretaker prime minister, probably Dominic Raab, but then a general election might have to be called. I just think we need to get on with the job of sorting out some of the problems facing us: the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, the situation in Ukraine, the migrant crisis, the Northern Ireland Protocol, all these issues that are facing people today. And I don't think that whoever was in number 10 leading a Conservative administration would change some of those challenges.